Just as an initial disclaimer, I really want to make it clear that I have no authority and no tips. I mean, I don't know how to make a successful ERC proposal. I mean, just the fact that I got some doesn't mean that I know how to do it. So I just can share a little bit of my experience and say how I did it. But also, I think as a disclaimer, I think if you are working on preparing an ERC proposal and you ask advice and feedbacks and etc. from different people, I think you will see my camera is off. Okay. You will see that you will probably receive lots of different advices, sometimes contradicting themselves, or so even some of the things that I may say today will contradict some other advices that you may receive. So at the end of the day, you are always responsible for, I mean, it will be up to you to decide what is the right way to work for you. So I just prepared a few things and I started with the questions because Mireia proposed me a few questions to start the discussion. So I will just start with these and then see what are your questions. So the questions that I received were, was this your first ERC Advanced Grant proposition and how would it compare to starting grant? And so it was my first submission for the Advanced Grant. I'm not sure that I did it differently than I did for the starting grant. So if some of you already had the starting grant, I think I prepared my proposal pretty much in the same ways, which means really trying to think first about what is the core idea that I wanted to push forward and then writing from that, but no real difference for me compared to the starting grant. Okay, a second question that I received, I will say it, but I don't have an answer. So the question was, would you advise researcher falling right outside the ERC consolidator grant eligibility window to submit an advanced grant application? And I don't know. So I don't have any advice on that. Did you receive any support in preparing the proposal? So this is where I can just say how I did it. And it's true for both the ERC project that I got. First, I took a very long time to prepare them, not to write. The actual writing time of the proposal was not super long, but just to think. I mean, having an idea and then taking probably several years to kind of mature it properly and thinking about, okay, I have this idea, which I think is a good idea, but I don't know how to exactly turn that into a proposal. And I think that for me is what really takes time. And then when I arrive to that, writing is actually not the most complicated part. In terms of support, I did not use support. I mean, some universities, I guess, propose support from consultants rereading the proposal. I did not, but so I cannot say whether it helps or not. So I will definitely not advise you to not do it. I think it's up to you. But I did have some friendly reviews from colleagues, so close colleagues that I trust and I can think of what is the mindset, so I can understand their comments. But also, okay, for the previous grant, the starting grant, I asked for reviews from colleagues whom I trust, but who are in a very different fields. So very different disciplines, very different methodologies, even different epistemologies, and just to make sure that with their fresh eyes, the proposal was making sense. Support, also that's, I don't know if depends on the universities. At UC Louvain, since a few years, we are organizing mock panels. So that's for after you submitted the proposal, but that is a very, very good exercise. So I can only encourage you, when you have submitted the proposal, if you are coming to the interview stage, to do several mock panels with close colleagues, again with colleagues from different fields, etc. And I think it's very important to have these feedbacks to help you think. And then in terms of support for preparing the proposal, and for preparing for the next steps, the interviews, etc. I think from my side, mostly what I do is when I finished writing and I submitted the proposal, it was rereading it dozens of time and making a long list. I think I had a list of 40, 50 questions that I was asking myself about this proposal. And so I try to really ask as much as possible questions about the proposal. So be my own most critical reviewer and think about answers to each of these questions. Okay, I think that's what I can say at this point for support. The next question I received was, how did you manage the balance between the ambitious objective and the feasibility? I think that's been coming up already in some of the questions before. And again, I can only say how I did it. I think I try to balance really proposing new ideas that are, of course, necessarily, if these are new ideas, they are obviously out of my comfort zone to some extent, and they are partly out of my expertise and are partly beyond what I can do. And I think that's the whole point of it. But at the same time, also anchoring some parts of the project in key assets that I have in terms of skills, etc., so that I can show that the proposal builds on the strengths that I have in terms of technical tools and conceptual tools, etc., but is really ambitious in the sense of going much beyond that. And I think that's the balance that is always a bit complicated to achieve. And in this ERC proposal is this balance between showing that you can do it, that you're the right person to do it, but showing that it goes much beyond what you've been doing so far. So I think that is one of the key balance to achieve. And another of the key balance to achieve that is, I think, always tricky for me, is that I think, I don't know, again, so that's only speaking from my experience, etc. I think that what the ERC panels are looking to some extent is proposals that are only fit for the ERC, in the sense that it's a very large pot of money for a single PI and some collaborators around. So it's very different from a Horizon project where you have consortium with lots of partners and everyone is getting a little bit of the money. So I think what they look for in this ERC proposal is something where if the ERC doesn't fund the whole of it, then it's not going to happen. So trying to show in your proposal that they really need to put this much amount of money to fund the whole proposal, because only by funding this whole thing, you will be able to deliver the answers that you're seeking. And that's difficult because you have to at the same time balance that with the kind of risk management, in the sense that you have to be able to show that the whole project will not collapse if one piece doesn't work. There's always risk. One PhD student that is progressing less well than you were expecting, or one experiment that takes more time, or some data collection that is disrupted, field work, etc. So you have to convince them that if one of the pieces falls apart, the whole thing doesn't collapse. But at the same time, you have to convince them that they have to fund the whole thing as a whole. Otherwise, if you would have to do the same thing by having one PhD student funded by the FNRS and one PhD student funded by a Horizon project, etc., it would not work like that. So I think that's one of the balance to achieve. Okay, I think I will stop here in terms of my kind of opening statements, and look for the question, and then see if I can answer some of these. Yeah.
Thank you, Patrick, for your presentation. Yeah, we continue then with the Q&A. So we have received a question beforehand, and that is the following. Did you consider choosing a secondary panel, SH2, and did you choose ERC keywords from the SH2 panel next to ERC keywords from the SH7 panel?
No. I honestly, I could not even totally say what is the SH2 panel. So no, I just went for the one that seemed to be fitting for me. And okay, of course, all the panels are different, etc. But the SH7 panel specifically, I think it's already relatively broad, with kind of more qualitative, more quantitative, more human-oriented, more natural science-oriented panel members, etc. So I did not think that I was at risk of being out of scope for the panel, because I think it's broad enough.
Okay, thank you. And then we had one other question about the interview. So you already told us a bit how you prepared for this and what support you have received. But just practically, was it an on-site interview? Was it online? How did it go? The 20 minutes, 30 minutes? Please tell us a bit more about
I
that.
think so. No, I think it's all online. When I did the starting grants, so 10 years ago, it was online or on site, etc. On site mostly, and I agree that it was a bit discriminatory, because I live in Brussels, so it was pretty easy for me, but those who had to travel half of Europe for that were a bit disadvantaged, I think. So now everything is online. It depends very much on the panel. So in the SH7, I think it's 3 minutes of presentation, and then the 17 minutes of Q&A. So that's a total of 20 minutes, I think, something like that. But given that the number of proposal is changing and kind of increasing, I think, over time, maybe it might be even shorter over time, because I think the panels are struggling a bit. But it's 3 minutes, so clearly in a 3-minute presentation, the goal is not to recap the whole proposal. The goal is really to make sure that the key idea is salient in the minds of the panel, so that they see, okay, this is this proposal by this person, I remember. And that's pretty much what you can do in 3 minutes of presentation. And in the Q&A, I think beyond what I said, I mean, trying to prepare as many questions as I could, I think the key challenge for me, and I think for many, is to make short and focused answers, to make sure that the panel members can ask all the questions that they have, because the time is relatively short. And if there is a panel member that doesn't have the time to ask their question, they will remain with this question, and this question will become a doubt, and this doubt will become a burden. So I think I think the advice I would say is make sure that you have short, focused answer where you say, this is my answer. If you want to have more details, of course, I can give more details. But if the panel member is satisfied with your short answer, then they will move to the next question. And at some point, hopefully, you will exhaust the questions that they have before you run out of time.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very helpful. Then we go to the next question. When you say that you gave your starting grant to people outside of your fields, do you mean far outside? So a physicist if you're or a sociologist, or outside of my expertise, but the same general discipline?
Outside of the discipline, but okay, I'm a geographer, and we do a lot of work at the kind of very interdisciplinary, at the interface between natural science and social science, etc. So it's not as if I was a particle physicist giving my proposal to a sociologist. So it was more giving my proposal to climate scientists, for example, who I would say are much more into natural science, much more into positivist epistemologies than I am. So I'm navigating a little bit in between. So something like that. I think for reading the proposal, I don't think it necessarily makes sense to say I'm a philosopher and I will give my proposal to a physician. That's probably the people will not get it. But for the interview stage, I think for the mock panels, I think it makes sense to have anyone in the room, because anyone can still judge your presentation style, your slides, see if you respond to the question in a focused way, etc. But for reading the proposal, I would say, but if you're, I don't know, particle physicist, I think you can give your proposal to a chemist. It would still be quite different in terms of expertise, etc. But at least someone who would understand or be able to read parts of the proposal, I think.
Okay, and then we have, thank you, we have a follow-up question on that. So if a part of the proposal went outside your expertise, your comfort zone, how did you justify the feasibility of the project, and through which concrete means?
I think mostly it comes down to, in my case, I do it that often in two ways. First is securing collaborators, colleagues from other universities or anywhere, etc., who have the expertise that I'm lacking, or where I'm weaker, and it can be methodological expertise, it can be theoretical expertise, or it can be contextual expertise. Like we do a lot of field work, and so in all the ERC proposals that I've proposed, etc., we always work with collaborators in the regions that we study and who know the regions very well, etc. So securing collaborators, making sure that they are on board, and you can list them in the proposal. I don't know if it matters actually or not, but at least that's how I do. I would say, okay, to make sure that we are on the right track in terms of, I'm thinking about the current project that we're starting now, which is about democratic backsliding. We want to make sure that we are right on track in terms of political theories about democracy, which is not my expertise, but we try to make sure that I have colleagues who are experts on this and who are ready to help. And another thing that I've done in the 2 ERC project is balancing between PhD students and postdocs. And so I tend to write parts for PhD students that are closer to my expertise, because then I can, of course, that's the job, supervise the PhD student really in the things that I know well, and to use postdocs to complement the expertise of the team. So sometimes in the previous project, I had anthropologists, postdoc. I'm not an anthropologist. I don't know about anthropological theories, etc. But they knew. And in this current proposal project, for example, I have political scientists, postdocs. It's also not my expertise, but they kind of bring this expertise to the group.
Okay, thank you. Again, very helpful. Then we have another question. How can I evaluate myself if I am good enough or ERC worthy of PI?
That's a good question. I don't know. Again, I don't know. I don't exactly know how it works, right? So we are all trying to reconstruct post hoc. But my impression would be focus on the proposal. So if you think you really have a great idea, kind of cool project, something that is kind of groundbreaking, something that will stand out and where the panel members will say, wow, this is like a really cool idea, then go ahead and do it. And I think if your project is great and it's well written, etc., my expectation would be that they will focus on that first and say, okay, maybe we cannot be 100% about the track record of this person or whatever, but the idea is super cool, so let's go. But okay, that's would be just my guess.
Okay, thanks. And then we have the last question that is the following. How did you organize yourself to develop your idea and get to writing the proposal amid all your other work?
Mhm. Okay, so as I said, that's I think in the for example, if I take the current one, it's really something ideas that have been running through my head over several years. So so it took a long time, which probably means that I didn't manage very well my time. But at the same time, I think it was necessary for reading stuff, thinking, discussing with people, going into dead ends also, because sometimes I've been trying to, the current project that I have, I've been trying to develop it into a previous proposal and I failed. Not failed in the ERC, but failed in my mind. So so just to say that it takes, at least to me, took time, and that's the kind of time that goes in between all the other activities. It's always something that is running in your head, etc., etc. And then the actual writing time, I don't know, it was finding the right spot, I guess, somewhere over the summer, etc. Depend on, yeah. At some point, okay, no. If I have to answer about this, it's, I think, something that we all have to learn, and that some people are better at that than others. I'm not good at that, but I've been learning to say no. So I think for the year before I submitted the ERC, when I after several years of thinking, when I realized that, okay, now I think it was really time to actually do it and write and submit. I think for the months before, the year before, probably, I started to say no to many things, just because I knew that if I would say yes to collaborate on some work, etc., then 6 months later, I would not have the time to actually write the proposal. So I think I said no to a number of things. And after a year of saying no to new things, and the old things start to all be completed, I think I had a bit of time window to write. Yeah, so I think that is the answer.
Okay, thank you. Then, yeah, actually, a new question came in, so I'll raise it. How did you organize peer review process while preserving the novelty part of the proposal?
Um, I'm not sure what the question is exactly. If it means organizing peer review while keeping the novelty, in the sense of being concerned that if I have a good idea and I share it with others, people will steal it or etc. I'm not concerned about that, so I didn't care about that. If it's preserving the novelty in the sense of you will get feedbacks from people, and sometimes people will I mean, it's the same if I provide a feedback on a proposal. I provide a feedback from my point of view with the things that I'm interested in somehow. And so if you follow all the feedbacks from all the people, you will probably lose the novelty of your proposal, because your proposal will look like what all the other things are, all the other people are doing, because they will comment and say, that's interesting, but you could do a little bit of more of this, or that's interesting, but why didn't you use this method? And that's because that's what people have in their mind. So I think that's a point of the point of the feedback is to have a feedback. Okay, does it make sense? Am I completely out of the reality? Do you think that it's conceptually completely incoherent or something like that? That's the kind of feedback that I try to take, but I don't feel obligated to take all the feedbacks. And I think that's really what you have to make sure to preserve if you ask feedback from people, is you have to preserve your core ID and what makes it novel.